Right, folks, if you've got your slide pack open, everybody's got a brew, we will kick off. Right, first of all, a little bit about me. Slide 2. I've been in the uni for a few months, over a year. I started off in the PO department pretty early into my uni career. Did over a year recruiting in the personnel department. Did 6 months as a mentor, and I've been teaching since January. When I first joined the uni, I started off scouting for the Noobs on Patrol, so I was doing E-War and co-op scouting for them, and that kind of got me interested in the whole cloaky thing, and then that was a natural progression into stealth bombers. And this is I'm one of the four leaders. Actually, I think we're up to about 8 or 9 now, so I need to update that slide. Got a number of new leaders for uni bombers just to take more fleets out and pass the knowledge on. So what are we going to talk about today on slide 3? Well, we're going to talk about the bombers. We're going to talk about how to fit them. We're going to look at the bombs and torpedoes and how we can maximise their effectiveness. Have a quick look at how people can train to get into a bomber if it's something people fancy doing in the future. And then we'll have a little bit of a look at how we actually do a bombing run in the uni, so people have an idea of what they're kind of getting into. And then we'll talk about how we can use cloaks effectively, stay alive a little bit longer, and then we'll wrap up with a little bit of information about the uni bomber program. As usual with any of my classes, for anyone who's been along, questions all the way through, please folks, just type them up in lecture.e-uni with a big Q at the front so we can pick them out. Right, before we kick off, any questions? No, Steve, got no problem if you record it. I think Michael is anyway. If I can get a copy of the recordings, that'd be great though, please, and then I'll stick it on the system for other people to listen to. Assuming, of course, I'm awesome. Right, if you have a look at slide 4, before you can even get into a bomber, there's a number of skills that obviously you're aware of you need to have. You need to have racial frigate to 5, and because you've already got racial frigate to 5, because of the bonus that gives you on the bomber, you're instantly, before you sit in it, getting 50% bonus to flight time, 100% bonus to velocity. Bearing in mind velocity and flight time basically means range, so you've got a 300% range increase on torpedoes and a 50% bonus to explode. Now I'm not going to get into the mechanics of missiles, but fundamentally explosion velocity, the faster the target is going, the less likely they are to take an amount of damage based on the explosion velocity. So if your explosion velocity is higher, you're more likely to be damaging the ship. You're also going to need your co-op skill bonus, and as it says there, every level of skill bonus gives you a 5% bonus to bomb damage and a 15% bonus to the torpedo damage. And we'll have a look at bomb and torpedo damage types in a moment. Like with a number of specialist ships, there's also a roll bonus. As you can see there, it's almost free to fit torpedo launchers, so that's why you can fit battleship-sized equipment into a frigate hull because of that roll bonus. You've obviously got a reduction in CPU for the cloak, and you can target as soon as you decloak afterwards. And fundamentally, for a covert ops ship, you can fit a covert ops cloak. Right, let's move on and have a quick look at the 4 bomber types that are available to us. The questions always come up, what's the best bomber? Like anything in EVE, there's no real best bomber, it's down to what you prefer to fly. However, obviously, if you know what your targets are going to be, there will be optimum bomb types and torpedo types that will help. But the order I've put these in is the order that we tend to see the ships in uni bombers, so popularity rather than the fact that any bomber is better than any other one. So first of all, we tend to see the Galenti Nemesis more than anything. Like it says there, it's bonus for thermal damage, so if you're using Scorch bombs and Inferno torpedoes, you're going to get that extra massive increase on your DPS. It's got an average amount of CPU, but it can be a little bit tight to fit because it's got one of the lowest power grids of a stealth bomber. There are 2 slot arrangements in stealth bombers. There's either the 5-4-2, which the Nemesis has, or there's the 5-3-3. So basically, depending upon which racial bomber you're fighting, you either get an extra mid slot for E-War or an extra low slot to use for some of the other things that we'll look at for low slots in a moment. Like it says there, it'd be tight to fit, but it's a really good starter ship if you've got the skills. nice and fast, but it does take a little bit of a while to align. So again, like I said, with the low slots, what you can do on stealth bombers is you can use the low slots to compensate for the rigs, so you can balance between rigs and low slots to get what you need for fitting or for overcoming alignment issues and speed issues. The next one, and my personal favourite, is the Hound. Like it says there, it's the Minmatar ship. If you're using shrapnel bombs and Nova torpedoes, although it should be torpedoes, not trops, you will be getting that extra damage. It's average CPU and power grid, so reasonably easy to fit. It doesn't have, unfortunately, the extra E-War slot, but it's got the extra low. But fundamentally, the reason I personally like it is because it's fast. Fast align, high speed. The problem you have when you're flying with a covert ops cloak is you can't use a prop mod, so you're slow as hell. So anything that gives you that little bit of speed edge that just lets you align your bombing run up and get to where you need to be in space for slow bolting, I find makes a difference. And also fundamentally, if you get caught, you're going to die in a stealth bomber. So the faster you can get out of there, that's a little bit of tank. Then we get the Manticore. Caldari, kinetic damage, so concussion bombs and Scourge torpedoes. Again, a bit tight on the power grid fitting, but it does have the highest CPU, so it is slightly easier to fit than the Nemesis. It does have the extra E-War slot, which you'd almost expect from Caldari, but unfortunately, like it says there, it's one of the slowest, and it also has the largest signature radius. So again, it's going to be the fastest to lock onto. And easy to kill, so that's a drawback of the Manticore. And finally, the Purifier. Obviously, the biggest drawback it has is it's a MAR. It's bonused for electromagnetic damage, like it says, so electron bombs and Mjolnir torpedoes. Lowest CPU, but the highest power grid, so actually it's relatively easy to fit. Benefit of the Purifier is that it's got an extra large cargo hold. So whereas most stealth bombers can only fit 2 bombs in the cargo hold, it can fit 3, or you can stick 2 in the cargo hold and pick up a tiny little bit of salvage. But it's the slowest of all the bombers, and that's, I think, one of the biggest drawbacks, especially if you're trying to slow boat it. Like it says there, if you want to overcome that, you can put a nanofiber in the low, but then everything that you fit as a rig or a low slot just to compensate for the ship's weaknesses is stuff that you're not putting down there to boost its strengths. Right, any questions on the ship types? Is everybody at least still awake? That's always good. There's nothing worse than teaching a class here and there's no response and you don't know if you've actually pressed the right button. Right, let's have a quick look at slide 10. Let's have a talk about the actual fitting. Like we said, there's different slot arrangements, but every stealth bomber has 5 high slots because there's 5 things you want to fit. Your Covox cloaking device, 3 of your torpedo launchers, and your bomb launcher. If you have a quick look at the picture of the Hound I've got there fitted, can anybody tell me why I might have my 3 torpedoes launchers aligned the way they are rather than next to each other and just looking nice and all lined up for OCDness? Yeah, exactly, overheating. If it gets to the stage where you're taking a target down nice and quickly and you want to overheat your launchers, I don't know if everybody's aware of the way that overheating works, but not only do you start to burn the module you're overheating out, but it transfers heat to the modules on either side. So if you've got 3 torpedo launchers all overheated, the one on the left will damage itself and the one in the middle. The one in the middle is going to be damaging itself and the one on the left and the right, and similarly the one on the right is damaging itself and the one in the middle. So you burn your launchers out faster. Whereas by I've called it ripple fitting, by sticking another module in between, you're just spreading that heat out a little bit further. It means that your torpedoes are going to last longer before they burn out, and you're going to get that extra damage for longer. Does that all make sense to everyone? Yeah, Lily, it's definitely worth knowing. I mean, the first time you have your 3 guns next to each other and you overheat them and they all melt, then you turn around and go, God, overheating, what an absolute waste of time. Well, no, actually, when you know how to move stuff around and transfer your heat, it makes life a little bit easier. Right, the reason I've got T2 launchers in there is for talking about T2 as well. If you train your launchers up to 5, you can fit T2 launchers, and you can fire off the T2 rage missiles, which do extra damage, and the T2 javelins, which do extra range. Like it says there, the launchers have got the same stats exactly as the arbalests, but they need an extra 20 CPU. So in order to fit them, you're going to have to fit a low coprocessor. So again, it's another one of these where in order to get the fittings in, we're already filling up slots that otherwise we might want to use for other stuff. T2 launchers are a lot more expensive, but more importantly, the drawback of the T2 launchers is it gives you generally range that you can't use. So we'll have a look at torpedo range in a moment, and then hopefully why we fit Metaphor rather than T2 generally will become apparent. Yeah, you can. A couple of questions there. Martin talks about nanite paste. Yeah, definitely. If it gets to the stage where you're overheating anything, you want to be carrying sort of 20 to 30 units of nanite paste, and then as soon as you're finished, you can repair as soon as you're out the fight, and then get back into the next fight with fully repaired equipment. Frozen asks, this one makes a difference in the fitting window. I can rearrange the hotkeys. Talking about Ripple fitting the torpedoes, yeah, it's the fitting window. As long as you've got them separate in the fitting window, which is where they physically are on the ship, you can do what you want with your actual hotkeys. And the third thing you're going to fit is a bomb launcher. So now we've looked at the 3 things that we're going to fit in the 5 slots. We'll just have a quick look at what they do. So slide 11. I'm not going to read through that with you because you guys are all competent to read. But fundamentally, you shouldn't be using any of the T1 cloaks, because the difference between the T1 cloak and the T2 cloak is that with a covert ops cloaking device, you can warp around cloaked. The other ones you can't. You warp around uncloaked, and then as soon as you land, you have to cloak up. The thing to note is that when you cloak and decloak, very similar to the way you see it on Star Trek with the Klingons, they don't just appear instantly and disappear instantly. You get this transitional phase of about 2 seconds as they cloak up, and about 2 seconds as they cloak down. The problem you have is that even though the graphics show there's a slow cloak up and a slow cloak down, you actually, from the game's perspective, cloak immediately or decloak immediately. Right, thanks for linking that stuff for Theo. Talking about linking, because I forgot I didn't have a link monkey here, I owe you some links. Give me a second. So those are the 4 different stealth bombers for anybody that hasn't seen them before. And there, as you can see, that's the high slot stuff. So the covert ops cloaking device. I've linked the Meta 4 torpedo launcher and T2 launcher, so you can have a look at the difference in stats, and also the bomb launcher. Right, again, for those that aren't used to moving around cloaked, anything that comes within 2 kilometers of you will decloak you, apart from another cloaked up ship. However, even though you have your overview set to show you everything, beware that some things will actually have a bigger effect in space than their distance. For example, I was about 10k away from a gate when the gate decloaked me, and I died horribly very quickly. Because even though the gate was 10k away from the point that the system used to find the gate, the actual physical gate in space was larger. So just beware that even though your overview may say you're at a safe distance, some items in space are larger than they appear.
Sorry, what was the cloaking device you said you could warp cloaked?
Yeah, the one I've linked there, the covert ops cloaking device 2.
Thank you.
And as we say there, bottom thing there, what we suggest is when you get through a gate and you've got gate cloak on, you burn in a random direction, activate your cloak, activate whatever prop mod you've got, whether it's an afterburner or micro warp drive, change your direction, and then warp to whether it's your fleet mates or your safe spot, nice and cloaked. The reason we say you do that, well, in fact, can anyone tell me why we suggest you do that? Fundamentally, anything that sees a stealth bomber out there in nullsec will try and kill you. So yes, there is an element, as Pamela says, that other bombers that aren't cloaked up don't decloak you, but it's more to stop that interceptor moving at 5+K a second. Because if somebody sees you appear on grid, they will try and burn towards you, get within 2K of you and kill you. So by cloaking up and activating your prop mod, you end up getting a cycle of your prop mod before your cloak fits, because otherwise you normally wouldn't get your prop mod working. So if you immediately click your prop mod after you click cloak, you get a cycle of your prop mod, it gets you moving faster, and then as soon as you start to cloak up, change direction, because then it means that the interceptor that's burning towards you is now burning towards the wrong place. Yes, does that make sense now? Awesome. Right, moving on to slide 12, where the goodness of torpedoes. Give us a second, I shall link some torpedoes for you. All I've done there is link the Inferno torpedo, the two T2 versions of it, and the Caldari Navy, just so you can have a look at the different stats of one torpedo type and compare them. But fundamentally, like you see there, the Rage torpedoes are giving you 35% extra damage, but a reduced range, and similarly the Javelins are giving you 50% extra range, but reduced damage. Oh, hold on, I think we've got a question in Mumble. Right, smallest effective targets for torpedoes. If you give us a second, we're just going to have a look at the damage that they do in the next couple of slides, and we'll hopefully cover it there. Are you in lecture.e-uni, Edward? Sorry, Edmund. It's only that if questions could go in lecture.e-uni, it just makes it easy so I don't miss any, because I don't want to miss any questions that people have got. I don't have. Right, okay, no, that's cool. That's cool. Thanks. We really needed to know that you're lying in bed listening to this, as long as my voice is working for you. Right, now we talked about why we don't tend to use T2s. If you have a look at the blue stuff on the right hand side, like I said, before you even step in a stealth bomber, you're getting 50% extra range and 50% extra flight speed and 100% extra range. So that's giving you your ×3. Then by the time you get your missile projection and missile bombardment skills up to 5, that's your 1.5 and your 1.5. So your maximum range for the T1 weapons is 60 kilometers. If you start throwing T2 javelins, you're going out to 90k, and your range is 50. However, if you look below there, if you've got a Nemesis and long range targeting up to 4, you're only getting 84k out of it. So you can't even get the maximum benefit of javelin torpedoes unless you either learn long range targeting to 5 or start fitting a signal lamp in the low or a sensor booster in the mid. And again, you don't want to be having to use up your slots just to get the best out of your weapons. So we don't tend to focus on the javelin torpedoes. Similarly, if you've got a Hound, even with long range targeting 4, you're only getting out to 60k, so you're almost never going to benefit from having the extra range of javelins. However, the Rage torpedoes you would tend to use if you were doing a pause bash. That's probably about the only time you would look at fitting T2 launchers and T2 torpedoes. Other than that, we suggest it's T1 for any PvE ratting that we're doing, and Caldari Navy for PvP. Does that all make sense to people? I'm glad that makes sense to you, Martin. That would worry me if it didn't. So, how can we modify the damage our torpedoes do? How do we kill our targets faster? Right, if you have a quick look at slide 13, like we said, if you've got covert ops up to 5, you are going to get extra damage for the ship's torpedoes as long as you're fitting the right racial type of torpedo. There is no reason to not use the correct racial torpedo type. We'll talk about bombs later, that's different, but you always want to fit the right racial torpedo type for that extra damage. We also talked about the extra explosive velocity and range from your racial frigate, and like I said, Missile Projection 5 is going to give you that extra speed, which is extra range. Missile Bombardment 5, again, extra flight time, extra range. Missile Launcher 5 is worth getting because that's only a one-time skill, so that's an extra 10% rate of fire, which means an extra 10% damage. Also, though, it means you're more likely to have torpedoes in flight when your target explodes, so possibly a little bit of a waste there. We also recommend rapid launch and target navigation prediction up to 5 because they're only 2-time skills and they're relatively easy to train up. There's not a massive investment. So again, that's going to give you a 15% rate of fire, 15% extra damage, and like we talked about the target velocity, the faster a ship's going, the less damage it's taking. Beyond a certain point, if you can reduce that, then your target's going to take more damage, irrespective of how fast it's going and the explosion velocity. The two that we reckon you might want to think about, but possibly not get all the way to 5, warhead upgrades and guided missile precision. They're long train times up to skill level 5, so possibly you might not want to get that extra 2% damage or extra 5% signature radius. If you're going to focus on one or the other, I'd definitely suggest the signature radius of guided missile precision 5. Right, do you want to have a quick read of that? Make sure you're comfortable before we move on and have a look at bombs. Are there any questions about torpedoes or torpedo damage? Yashana asks, the covert ops skill doesn't show a 75% bonus. That's not the covert ops skill. If you have a look, that's the bomber skill. By having the covert ops skill bonus in the stealth bomber, you're getting 15% DPS to torpedoes per level. In fact, if you click on the ships I linked, the details are up there. Any other questions on torpedoes? Right, folks, I have now linked the Scorch Bomb. Have a look at that. That's the Galenti one that the Nemesis is bonused for. Bombs are rather different to torpedoes. Yeah, well, we're going to look at did they ask for target or torpedoes or bombs? Hold on. Yeah, no, you're right. We did ask about torpedoes. Bearing in mind they're battleship-sized weapons, they're designed for battleship versus battleship combat. So the smaller the ship, the less effective damage you're going to do on it. Yes, if you can find the right frigate in the right place and you can do lots of damage to it, great. However, cruisers and battleships are the most effective targets because of the fact that they're battleship-sized weapons. But if you find a frigate sitting still doing nothing, yeah, a torpedo is going to be very effective. Yeah, it's more the one that if you find a frigate, to kill it effectively with torpedoes, the pilot has to be really not paying attention because they're not really designed as frigate killers. So, slide 14, bombs. Unlike most weapons, you don't need to lock a target to launch a bomb. It is very much like the missile equivalent of a smart bomb. When you launch it, it will travel forwards at 3 kilometers a second for 10 seconds, and then it's going to detonate. So it will travel forward 30k and then detonate with a 15k radius. It deals damage to everything within that 15k radius. Now, the standard bomb deals 6,400 damage, but as we said, if you've got the right bomb type in the right stealth bomber, because the racial damage types match, and you've got CovOps 5, that's going to go up to 8,000 DPS. So everything in that area is going to take 8,000 DPS. If everything takes 8,000 DPS, why doesn't it all die very quickly? Well, we'll go on to that in a second. However, one of the big things to note is that bombs only have a small amount of armour and a tiny amount of structure. they have 99.5% armor resistance to their own damage type. So the issue you've got is if you launch two bombs of different types and they detonate, the first bomb that goes off will destroy the second bomb, and the second bomb won't detonate. So when you're launching volleys of bombs from stealth bombers, you have to launch the right bomb type. Sorry, hold on. Michael's asking, if something cloaked is in your blast radius, will it be uncloaked? No, but it will take damage. The damage is constant within the radius, yes, but we'll get onto that in a second. So just quickly, why we never launch more than 7 bombs in a salvo, if you have a look at slide 15, assuming we are destroying the Millennium Falcon there, I have got my flight to launch 7 bombs. And if you have a look at the right hand column there, so bomb 7 starts off when it's in flight with 240 armor and 50 structure, and then as you can see, as bomb 1 detonates, the armor gets stripped off bomb 7 all the way down to when bomb 6 detonates. When bomb 6 detonates, bomb 7 has got no armor left and 50 structural points, so bomb 7 will still detonate. If I had an 8th bomb there, by the time bomb 7 detonated, bomb 8 would be destroyed and it wouldn't go off and you'd just lose the effect. Does that all make sense? Yeah, so always launch the same bomb type and never launch more than 7 at once. Granted, you can get around that by overlapping them, so the damage overlaps, but the damage doesn't hit the bombs, because obviously if they're at a 15k radius, you can have a point where your damage is overlapping the target, but it's not overlapping the next set of bombs. So how do we modify bomb damage? Like it says on slide 16, there's not much you can do to modify bomb damage. Covert Ops modifies it directly, like we said, if you're flying the right ship and bomb combination. Unlike missiles and torpedoes, the target speed doesn't affect it. The only thing from a target perspective that affects it is signature radius. Now, Pamela asked earlier, is the damage constant throughout the radius? Yes, it is. However, you then turn around and go, well, hold on, surely 8,000 DPS kills everything. Well, unfortunately it doesn't, because despite the fact that the bomb explodes in a 15k radius, it's considered to have a 400 meter explosion radius constantly throughout that. So, like it says there, if you've got a frigate with a 40 meter signature radius and a 400 meter explosion radius affects it, it's only going to take 10% of the damage. It's only going to take between 640 and 800 damage, and therefore your frigate is going to survive that. So the only way we can make a target more vulnerable is for it to increase its signature radius, or for us to increase its signature radius. So if you can get your target to run a micro warp drive, it's going to bloom its signature radius by 500%, take 5 times as much damage, and probably fall over. So if you ever get caught in a bombing run, your plan is to get out of there, but do not use your micro warp drive, or it's going to hurt. If the target's got shield extenders or shield rigs fitted, that's going to passively increase its signature radius, so that'll obviously make it a little bit easier to damage. However, the majority of stuff you've come across tends to be armor tanked battleships. And also, if you can get a target painter on the target before the bomb goes off, you'll get a 25 to 30% bloom in their signature radius per target painter that you manage to get on the target, and again, that's extra damage. Does modifying bomb damage all make sense to people before we move on? Right, we've talked about the Covert Ops Cloak, we've talked about torpedoes, we've talked about bombs. That's the high slots all covered. Any questions on the high slots and high slot fitting? Pamela asks, can you have more than one bomb launcher? You can't fit more than one, no. Right, let's have a look at slide 18 and the mid-slot options. We'll just link them for you. Obviously, because we either have 4 or 3 slots, there are significantly more than 4 or 3 things we want to fit. unfortunately. So if you have a look there, prop mod. Now, obviously, like I said earlier, you can't use your prop mod while you're cloaked. However, if you're moving around an empty system and you wish to set up bookmarks, sometimes it's worthwhile just dropping your cloak, using your prop mod, getting to where you need to be, setting up your bookmarks, and then cloaking up if anybody else comes into the system, or if you need to move into another system. Then we have the medium shield extender debate. A number of people say, well, hold on a second, the stealth bomber is not there to be shot at and take damage. We shouldn't be fitting anything that increases its survivability. It's not there for that. You should be fitting things that will increase the damage that it can do. So a number of people say, you know what, you should always fit a shield extender so that if you get caught, it just gives you that little bit extra to get out there. There's another school of thought that says you shouldn't fit it at all. You should be fitting for the ship's benefits rather than fitting to overcome its weaknesses. In Unibombers, we don't mandate either unless the FC for a specific role wants to. I say, like anything, try it out, see what works for you. And then we've got the 3 bits of sort of E-War or screwing around with the target. We talked about the target painter and how that can give you a 25 to 30% extra signature radius and therefore extra damage. And then the other 2 bits and pieces, we suggest people try and fit a warp disruptor, T2 if you can, and a remote sensor dampener, because let's face it, you're firing torpedoes from long range. If you can stop your target locking onto you, you're using range as a little bit of a tank, and that can stop you dying, give you an opportunity to get out of there. And as for the warp disruptor too, people go, well, why do you add a warp disruptor and only get 1 point? Well, fundamentally, again, it's the range. It's a 20k range. You don't want to be getting closer to your target than you have to. The further you can stay away, the more likely you are to stay alive if you're fighting uncloaked. So what we tend to do in the small groups IFC is just try and balance the number of warp disruption with sensor dampening and target painting, just so that we've got a little bit of flexibility in what we do. But again, that's going to depend what ships people are in, because you're definitely going to want to have a prop mod, and then on some ships that only gives you 2 options. And if you want to fit a shield extender, then you're limited in what else you can fit. Any questions on mid slots for stealth bombers? Pamela asks, what about ECM? Again, to be honest, generally you're not going to be fitting ECM because you don't want to be hanging around that way. It's more the fact that you want to either be increasing the damage you're doing to the target or stopping the target being able to hit you. However, if you want to come along and play with ECM, more than happy. I must admit, I've never actually tried to fit ECM to a stealth bomber, so I don't know if there's going to be any power or CPU issues. Sue asks, metaphor target painters or T2s, again, fit the best you can fit, but working on the theory that at some stage you're likely to lose your bomber regularly, so it's getting that balance of how much do I invest in the ship, knowing that I'm possibly going to lose it. Right, if there's no more questions about mid slots, we will move on to low slots and slide 20. Right, like I've linked there, a number of groups. Interestingly enough, with stealth bombers, what you tend to find is that you use the low slots to act as rigs and vice versa. So if you've got a low slot free, you might want to fit a nanofiber, but if your low slots are used up, you can get the same benefit of the nanofiber, like I said, it says there, similarly with the small polycarbon engine housing and the low friction nozzle joints. So again, you can balance between your low slots and your rigs to get all your fittings in and get the maximum benefit from your ship. So stealth bombers is definitely something that you want to play around with on EFT or something like that, just to get the maximum output and shuffle your rigs and stuff around. Because what you don't want to do is put your rigs on, put everything in, and then go, actually no, I need to take that low off and I need to swap my rigs around and just destroy your rigs. I've thrown away so many rigs doing that. Yeah, that. No, can you hear me all right, Aaron? Did I answer Captain all right, or did you not hear that? Right. Okay. Is micro warp drive better than the afterburner? Under what circumstances is each better? Like I said, the only time I would really be flying around using my prop mod uncloaked is when I'm in a completely safe empty system, or I'm just doing something risky that I probably should know better with. In that case, I'm always going to want to have a micro warp drive because I'm going to want to get to where I want to be faster, especially if I'm in an empty system. Personally, the only time I'd probably fit an afterburner is when, because of the fittings I've got on the ship, I can't fit a micro warp drive, because there's no way you should be using it in combat, because you shouldn't be uncloaked, if that makes sense. Just running down, Vale asks, do I have any build examples? I've got a couple Vale. I don't actually know if I've got any decent ones built up, because I don't know if I've saved any of my ship ones. But what I'll do is I'll link some builds at the end, and then we'll get other people to link their builds right at the end so that people can copy and paste, okay? Uh, Amakota asks, should you not bother fitting a prop mod at all? You know what? That is a quite legitimate thing to do, is to not fit a prop mod and stick useful things on your mid slots that will give you a benefit in combat, etc. However, having spent 25 minutes positioning myself once while slow boating cloaked, it was horrible. I always want to have a prop mod personally, but again, like with anything, it's personal choice. Right, and going back to the low slots, whilst we talked about having medium shield extender, some people go, well, why don't I stick a damage control 2 in the low slot? The answer is fundamentally that's even worse than a medium shield extender. Quite a lot of people fly with MSEs, and there's no problem with that. But for a damage control 2 to be working effectively, you need to be getting shot at a lot, and fundamentally, you shouldn't be fitting anything that's going to require you to get shot at a lot to be useful. If you're going to fit anything, fit the medium shield extender. It just gives you an extra big shield, just to give you that chance to get out of there alive. A DCU2 won't give you that. Right, any questions on low slots and rigs? Right, folks, on to slide 22. We had a bit of a chat in a couple of channels this morning about training requirements. Like it says there, from a brand new character, it's 32 days and 19 hours. However, if you get your +3 enhancements in, and if you've already picked some of these things up, it'll be a lot quicker for you to get into a stealth bomber. So fundamentally, what do you need? Racial Frigate 5, Covert Ops 1, Cloaking 4, and Torpedoes 1. That's it. There's a little bit of prerequisites for some of these, but again, especially if you've got a Kaldari character, you probably have some of your missile skills already trained up, and you're going to have trained up your power grid, CPU, electronics upgrades and stuff, and spaceship command anyway for your Covert Ops 1. So again, hopefully you're already 3/4 of the way towards training your stealth bomber requirements as part of your general gameplay. However, on slide 23 is some of the suggested skills. There's quite a lot there, but if you look at them, most of them are to level 2, level 3. There's only a couple of them at 4 and a couple of them at 5, so it's actually not that long a train just to get some of the skills that we think will make your life a lot easier in a stealth bomber. All these details about requirements are also in the Uni Bombers wiki page as well, so if you want to have a look offline, that's there. And there's the link to the Uni Bombers page. Yeah, that extra bit of armor is always going to help. Yeah, I wasn't speaking Ion because I was linking the Uni Bomber stuff. Yeah, as I said to Pamela, mechanics 4, yeah, a little bit of extra structure. It's always going to help, just to give you that opportunity to get out of there. Plus, let's face it, it should be something that you're training up as part of your core stuff anyway. Right, if there's no more questions about training, let's have a quick look at how we do the bombing run on E-UNI. So if you want to have a look at slide 25, please, folks. We've got a nice little picture for you. On Uni bombers, we use 3 targetings as part of our bombing run. We have the pre-impact point, which is an on-grid assembly point where basically all your stealth bombers hang around, drink coffee, read books, and generally sit and twiddle their thumbs while they're waiting. We have the impact point, which is where you start your bombing run, and then we have the escape point, or the EP, which is how you where you get away from after you've done the bombing run. So, if you want to have a quick look at slide 26, please. So we're all hanging around the pre-impact point. The FC identifies a target coming in, getting lost in a bubble. So we all then warp to the impact point, which is 35 to 50 kilometers away from the target. Once you get to the impact point, the FC will call a speed and a target, and you will head towards that target at 75% plus of your velocity. Anybody know why we go for 75% plus? Yeah, exactly. You need to be travelling at 75% of your base velocity before you can warp away, and if you're already doing that speed, you can insta warp as soon as you've launched your bomb. So what you'll be doing is you'll be approaching the target and calling out your distances to the target, and those that are lagging behind will speed up a little bit so that you get to the stage where all your bombs ideally are going to detonate at the same point at the same time. Like it says there, when the FC is happy, it'll be a decloak, launch your bombs, and then warp out to the EP. And then while you're in warp, you should be reloading and recloaking. As soon as you land on the EP cloaked, you want to click off into space and move, just in case anybody comes out of warp and they're not hooked up. What you don't want is them to cascade uncloak everybody, because that would be horrible. Despite the fact that it shows the lot warping through the bubble, you obviously wouldn't warp through the bubble, but you'd have everything lined up, your IP and your EP lined up so that you can launch your bomb and still get the target within the 15k burst radius, and then warp out without you guys getting stuck in the bubble. Take a couple of minutes to just have a quick look again at slide 25 and 26 to just be comfortable with it. And then when you've done that, if you can X up in lecture.e-uni, and I will assume you've got no more questions, and we'll move on. Right, folks, slide 28. Those of you that haven't done much in nullsec or in CoVops, a little bit about bookmarks. And again, obviously they're important wherever you fly in space, but as a stealth bomber pilot, they're specifically important just to have that collection of places where you can observe gates, you can dock and undock from the station safely, because as I say, if people find you there in a stealth bomber, they will try and hunt you down and kill you. Lots of safe spots in lots of places, because again, as I say, people will try and hunt you down and kill you. And also, like we talked about, the pre-IP, the IP, and the escape points, the kind of areas that you know you're going to bomb in regularly. If you can set up those points, it just gives you more options. Is the escape point on-grid or off-grid from the target? Generally it's off-grid, usually to a celestial, so a number of AU away generally. The last thing you'd want is to be have an escape point on grid where somebody warps there and uncloaks everybody else on grid. That would be really unpleasant. So yeah, generally while you're warping off, you're reloading, you're cloaking up, and then the way to check is when I say annoying, I'm just being very subtle. If you uncloak everybody else and everybody else then gets locked and killed, it's a death sentence. It can be just minor annoying, but it can just result in everybody wiping. So yeah, it's a bad thing and should be avoided at all costs. Right, Vale asks, how do you organise bookmarks by system name? How about all the IPs and EPs? To be honest, I just tend to use the location and distances. I don't have a very comprehensive bookmarking process. Your best bet is to go out there and Google the systems that are out there and find one that you like and use that. So, sometimes you're not going to have the bookmarks. You're either going to come up with an opportunity target, or you're just going to be somewhere that you're not normally in and you don't have the bookmarks. So what do you do? Slide 29, if you're with somebody else, that makes life a little bit easier, because what you can do is you can have somebody warp to the area at 100, and then you bounce off and warp to them at 100, and they bounce off and warp to you. So you can set the points up by laddering backwards from celestials, or if it's just you, you can warp to a point, create a bookmark, bounce off, then warp to that bookmark at distance, and keep doing that to create the bookmarks that you need. So for those that haven't spent much time cloaked up, if you want to have a look at slide 30, there are some good things there that you may wish to consider. Yeah, get into the habit of not warping to things at 0, because that will kill you very quickly. It talks about stealth bombers not staying on grid. There are 5 R's to stealth bombing, and that's release, run. Can you all hear me?
Yep.
Yeah, sorry about that, folks. I don't know what happened. It's strange because that's the second battery that's exploded in this mouse in a week. Yeah, so going back to it, the 5 R's of stealth bombing: release, run, reload, recloak, reset. So get your bomb off, get the hell out of there. While you're in warp, reload. While you're in warp, recloak. And then as soon as you're there, get reset, depending upon where the FC wants you to be, which could potentially be back at the pre-impact point, just to go and have a look and listen to all the shouting and swearing in local. Because people will call you bad names. That bit there, third from the bottom again, especially in covert ops where you can't just look around and see who's in space with you, being able to communicate effectively with your FC is critical. So again, it's down to who you are, where you are, what you need to let them know. And finally, if you like going around and blowing things up really quickly, getting on lots of kill mails, and then bouncing from system to system really quickly, getting into lots of fights, stealth bombing is not for you. This is very much like World War II U-boat action. You are there, cat and mousing, looking for a target, getting into position, and there's been times where we've got everybody into position just in time, and then the target's warped off. Yeah, herding invisible cats. Right, finally, if all this hasn't either made you fall asleep or become really uninterested and actually you fancy trying it, if you have a look at slide 31, we've got some of the details. Hong leads the Unibombers, and then there is Garth, Al, Clutter, Judge, and Leah are the US time zone leads at the moment, and then myself, Martin, and Camilla are the EU time zone leads. We're down at Quaif, company factory UMQ7F, which is 4 jumps out of HiSec, and also 4 jumps away from the nullsec campus. We have a chat channel. If you're not already in it, sb.e-uni, please dive in there, join up, and come along and chat to us. There's also a mailing list with exactly the same names. The mailing list is only used by the leaders, so if you've got something to pass on to everybody, please let us know, and we will throw something out on the mail list. But get yourself on there, and we tend to announce classes and things. Obviously this wasn't there because this was an ad hoc class. We run a launch a bomb, get a bomb policy, so as long as you can come down there with 2 or 3 reloads of the bomb types, any bomb that you throw downrange as part of a Unibombers event, we will replace for you. If you wish to know more, I've already linked Unibombers up there, so go and have a look at that. If you've got loads of stuff that you want to get down here, The nullsec campus, as I say, is 4 jumps away, and they have a freighter run. Details are on that slide. It heads down there at least twice a week. So you basically go off to JITA, buy all the stuff you want, or get it to JITA, send it to them on contract. They will move it down to nullsec campus for you, and then all you have to do is get to NSC and then fly it all over to UMQ7F. Right, before we start linking ships for Vale's gratification, any questions on what we've covered today? Right, a question. Oh, sorry, I've got a puppy in the background. Question from Pamela: do you ever use bombs and torps at the same time? Not necessarily at the same time, but I've done one where I've bombed somebody unsuspecting in nullsec, and then when they hung around and did nothing, I uncloaked and torped them to death. You could potentially use them one after the other, but generally, if you're going out in a fleet, they tend to be used for different things. Yeah, Theo asks, where are stealth bombers most useful? What do they spend their time doing? To be honest, they spend most of their time waiting. It's like the standard real-life military. You spend lots of time training, lots of time waiting, and then a few seconds of absolute hell breaking loose, and then back to waiting and training again. Again, if you can find a fleet, especially a fleet in combat, that's good, because you can just launch your bombs into the middle of that and get involved in lots of kill mails, or just set pieces where this ambush is set up, where you wait for a target to appear, get stuck in a bubble, and then you're waiting for them. Those tend to be the two big things that you're going to be involved in. As Bonus says, you can always have torps and bomb launcher fitted. To be honest, you tend to fit them both all the time anyway. The only time you wouldn't is if you're off into low sec, because bombs can only be launched in null sec. So if you're off doing a roam into low sec, you wouldn't need your bomb launcher. However, if you're starting off in null sec and ending in null sec, you may bump into a target and wish you'd had your bomb launcher. So yeah, you can fit torps and bomb launchers and have them all online. Palmer says, are SBs ever used in regular fleets? They can be used as part of a fleet. Obviously, you get the problems with nobody else in the fleet knows where you are. So whilst we try and do some liaison work with nullsec campus, if anything, what we tend to do is provide them more with intelligence than anything, because if they get involved in a fight, there's not much we can do, because if you start throwing bombs down, you're going to hit your own corp mate. What you can do sometimes is if there's a fight going on, you can throw an extra couple of torpedoes down, but obviously that's potentially risky because you have to drop your cloak for that. Yeah, sorry, as Ed says, when I said you can only throw bombs in nullsec, yeah, nullsec and wormholes. And one of our intentions is at some stage we will look at possibly going in and playing in wormholes with stealth bomber fleets, like I mentioned on the Unibombers introduction session yesterday. For those that are there, we'll do small gang rooms looking for targets. We'll do larger gang rooms where potentially we're going to go into wormholes, and then what we're also looking at organising is some black ops hot drop fleets where just we will drop a fleet of stealth bombers from nowhere, jump them into a system, kill a whole load of targets, and then run away laughing. Right, Theo asks, do you fly in uniformed wings on Nemesis? No, like we discussed earlier, we would always fly the same bomb type, but not necessarily the same ship. Granted, if all your pilots can fly one type of ship, that's what you want, but quite often we'll get pilots down at Unibombers that are only trained in one ship type, and then all we do is we find the ship that we've got the most number of or the most people can fly, and then we fly that so we get the maximum bonus for the bombs that we're going to be launching. So yeah, always fly the same bomb type, don't always fly the same ship. Caden asks, do bombs damage pauses? What happens when the bomb touches the force field? You know what? I don't know about that, actually. I don't think bombs do affect pauses, to be honest. Oh, there you go. Right, got a question from Edmund. I'm concerned you make it sound like you don't use torpedoes much. Do they get much action, or are you really a bomb launcher? Well, they're called stealth bombers, not stealth torpedoers. Yes, the bomb is your core weapon, but yeah, you do. Torpedoes will get used, but fundamentally, if you're out there as a fleet, ideally you're going to be wanting to launch a number of bombs against a target-rich environment. If we found a couple of small ships, yes, we would probably uncloak, use the I've lost it now. Use your target, your E-War, ECM, and then just torque them down. So I think I've got battery acid all over my hands, which doesn't help. Pamela says there's no problem with bombing your core mates. Quite often you could get away with that. However, in the uni, if you do it on purpose, unfortunately, big nasty men will knock on your door in the middle of the night and come and have a word with you. Right, are there any more questions before people link fit? Obviously the puppy's got questions. Yeah, we covered that, Martin. Weren't you paying attention?
Really?
Yeah, just talking about when you're most useful when you can come up against a big fleet and throw some bombs into a big fleet. If you can find something like brave newbies going out, that's always good. Or when we're setting up traps with bubbles. Vale asks, what ships do you suggest a new pilot head towards? To be honest, your best bet would be your racial frigate, because you're already going to be training that up as a new pilot. Go towards your racial type, because you've already got some of the skills that you need. And then once you've got the skills for your racial type, and you can fit your bomb launcher, your torpedo launcher, and your covert ops cloak, all it is just training the other ones up to 5. Ian asks, how many stealth bombers do you need to be effective? Again, it's going to depend on the situation. I know it's a horrible answer. If you're coming up against a whole lot of armour tanked battleships, obviously the more stealth bombers you have, the better. Let's face it, if you throw 100 bombs at a frigate, you're going to kill the frigate, but it's not very cost effective. So it's just getting that balance. Yeah, like we said, a fleet of 7 is going to be your optimum squad. So that you can all launch your bombs and not cause any problems. Caden talks about when setting up your pre-IP IPEP, do you set up mobile warp bubbles? Yes, we do have warp bubbles down in Unibombers, and we'll take them up and sometimes set them up. However, what we also like to do is find the gates that people set their own warp bubbles up anyway and use other people's bubbles, because then it means we can carry more bombs. And it also means there's usually other targets hanging around the bubbles. Right, there's a couple of hound fittings. Give us a second to grab some more. And there's a couple of nemesis as well. I don't actually have a purifier fit. So I don't know if anybody else wants to throw some more fits out there for people to play with. Oh, and now that I've got on top of that, it looks like all the questions have been answered. Awesome. Anybody else got any other any fits, especially any purifier fits that they want to throw out there for other people to steal? As I say, it's relatively easy because there's only 4 or 5 things you want to fit in each slot. Vale's asking, can a teammate paint a target for you? Yes, they can. Hold on a second, I've got to beat the puppy. And no, that's not a euphemism. Right, what you can do with the target painter, I mean, the target painter is relatively complicated to use unless you're torping with it. For a bomber, ideally, you approach the target, uncloak, launch your bomb, target, use your target painter, and then warp off. And despite the fact that you've warped off, your target painting cycle will still be affecting the target when the bomb detonates and give you that extra damage. It's not the world's easiest thing to coordinate, but it can be effective when it works. And as Martin says, because we talked about T1 torpedoes for PVE, you can rat battleships and make a little bit of money. And also work on your security standing as well. Right, ladies and gents, that is Stealth Bombing 101, the way the uni does it, so I apologise to the non-uni people for covering some of the uni specifics, but there you go. Any questions for me or anybody else?